This is the part two read through for the second half of Gawain and the Green Knight. You should have already watched the PowerPoint video that explains this background information about what happens between the end of part one and the beginning of part two. I will just read through this italicized part to refresh your memory, but there's more detail on the slide. For example, the Lord's name is Bertilac, and Lady Bertilac is his wife. And they don't tell you that in this part. As the end of the year approaches, Gawain leaves on his quest to find the Green Chapel and fulfill his pledge. After riding through wild country and encountering many dangers, he comes upon a splendid castle. The lord of the castle, Lord Bertilac, welcomes Gawain and invites him to stay with him and his lady for a few days. The lord proposes that he will go out. This is the game that he says he wants to play. He proposes that he will go out to hunt each day while Gawain stays at the castle. At the end of the day, they will exchange whatever they have won. When the lord is out hunting, Lady Bertilac attempts to seduce Gawain. Gawain resists her, however, and on the first 2 days accepts only kisses, which he then gives to the lord at the end of each day in exchange for what the lord has gained in the hunt. On the third day, Gawain continues to resist the lady, but she presses him to accept another gift, and that is where our story picks up. She, being Lady Bertilac, held toward him a ring of the yellowest gold, and standing aloft on the band a stone like a star, from which flew splendid beams like the light of the sun. And mark you well, it was worth a rich king's ransom. But right away he refused it, replying in haste, "My lady gay, I can hardly take gifts at the moment. Having nothing to give, it would be wrong to take gifts in turn." She implored him again, still more earnestly. Implored, begged. But again he refused it, and swore on his knighthood that he could take nothing. Grieved that he still would not take it, she told him then, "If taking my ring would be wrong on account of its worth, and being so much in my debt would be bothersome to you, I'll give you merely this sash that's of slighter value." She swiftly unfastened the sash that encircled her waist, tied around her fair tunic, and inside her bright mantle. It was made of green silk and marked of gleaming gold. A sash is like a wide, ribbony belt. I think there's a picture of it here. Nope, not so much. Okay. Um, it was made of green silk and was marked of gleaming gold, embroidered along the edges, ingeniously stitched. This too she held out to the knight, and she earnestly begged him to take it, trifling as it was, to remember her by. But again he said no, there was nothing at all he could take, neither treasure nor token, until such time as the Lord had granted him some end to his adventure. And therefore I pray you do not be displeased, but give up, for I cannot grant it, however fair or right. I know your worth and price, and my debt's by no means slight. I swear through fire and ice to be your humble knight. "Do you lay aside this silk," said the lady then, "because it seems unworthy, as well it may? Listen, little as it is, it seems less in value. But he who knew what charms are woven within it might place a better price on it, perchance. For the man who goes to battle in this green lace, as long as he keeps it looped about him, no man under heaven can hurt him, whoever may try. For nothing on earth, however uncanny, can kill him." Ah, so it's a magical sash. It protects the life of who wears it. And remember, Gawain is about to go have a giant green knight try to chop at his head. The knight cast about in distress, and it came to his heart this might be a treasure indeed when the time came to take the blow he had bargained to suffer beside the Green Chapel. If the gift meant remaining alive, it might well be worth it. So he listened in silence and suffered the lady to speak. And she pressed the sash upon him and begged him to take it. And Gawain did, and she gave him the gift with great pleasure, and begged him for her sake to not say a word, and to keep it hidden from her lord. And he said that he would, that except for themselves, this business would never be known to a man. He thanked her earnestly, and boldly his heart now ran. And now a third time she leaned down and kissed her man. When the Lord returns at the end of the day, Gawain gives him a kiss, but does not reveal the gift of the sash. He was supposed to exchange whatever he had with the Lord, but he hides the sash. Now it is finally New Year's Day, and Gawain must go out to meet the Green Knight. Wearing the green sash, he sets out before dawn. Gawain arrives at a wild, rugged place where he sees no chapel, but hears the sound of a blade being sharpened. Gawain calls out, and the Green Knight appears with a huge axe. The Green Knight greets Gawain, who, with pounding heart, bows his head to take his blow. This was that picture from the PowerPoint. Quickly, then, the man in green made ready, grabbed up his keen ground axe to strike Gawain. With all the might in his body, he bore it aloft, and sharply brought it down as if to slay him being Gawain. Had he made it fall with the force he first intended, as he being the Green Knight, he would have stretched out the strongest man on earth. But Sir Gawain cast a side glance at the axe, as it glided down to give him his kingdom come, and his shoulders jerked away a little from the iron. And the Green Knight caught the handle, holding it back, and mocked the prince with many a proud reproof. So Gawain flinches, he jumps away from the blade. The Green Knight caught the handle, holding it back, and mocked the prince with many a proud reproof. "You can't be Gawain," he said, "who's thought so good. A man who's never been daunted on hill or dale. For look how you flinch for fear before anything's felt. I never heard tell that Sir Gawain was ever a coward. I never moved a muscle when you came down. In Arthur's hall I never so much as winced. My head fell at my feet, yet I never flickered. But you tremble at heart before you're touched. I'm bound to be called a better man than you then, my lord," said Gawain. "I shied once no more. You have my word. But if my head falls to the stones, it cannot be restored." That's a very good point. He says, "Look, you knew that your head was magical. Mine's not." This is still Gawain talking. "But be brisk, man, by your faith, and come to the point. Deal out my doom if you can, and do it at once. For I'll stand one good stroke, and I'll start no more until your axe is hit, and that I swear." "Here goes, then," said the other, being the Green Knight, and he heaves the axe aloft, and stands there waiting, scowling like a madman. He swings down sharp, then suddenly stops again, holds back the axe with his hand before it can hurt. And Gawain stands there, stirring not even a nerve. He stood there still as a stone or the stalk of a tree that's wedged in rocky ground by 100 roots. Oh, merrily then he spoke, the man in green. "Good, you've got your heart back. Now I can hit you. May all that glory the good King Arthur gave you prove efficacious now, if ever it can, and save your neck." Efficacious means effective. So, the second swing, the Green Knight stalks as a test of Gawain's courage. He says, "Oh, I was just testing you." In rage, Gawain shouted, "Hit me, hero! I'm right up to here with your threats. Is it you that's the cringing coward after all?" "Whew!" said the man in green. "He's wrathful, too. No pauses, then. I'll pay up my pledge at once. I vow." He takes his stride to strike, and lifts his lip and brow. It's not a thing Gawain can like, for nothing can save him now. This is the Green Knight, raises that axe up lightly and flashes it down, and that blinding bites in at the knight's bare neck. But hard as he hammered it down, it hurt Gawain no more than to nick the nape of his neck, so it split the skin. The sharp blade slit to the flesh through the shiny hide. The red blood shot to his shoulders and spattered the ground. And when Gawain saw his blood where it blinked in the snow, he sprang from the man with a leap to the length of a spear. He snatched up his helmet swiftly and slapped it on, shifted his shield into place with a jerk of his shoulders, and snapped his sword out faster than sight. Said boldly, and, mortal born of his mother that he was, there was never on earth a man so happy by half. No more strokes, my friend. You've had your swing. I've stood one swipe of your axe without resistance. If you offer me any more, I'll repay you at once with all the force and fire I've got, as you will see. I take one stroke, that's all, for that was the compact we arranged in Arthur's hall. But now, no more for me. So on the third swing, the Green Knight nicks Gawain's neck. And so that's like a small wound. So he doesn't cut his head all the way off. He just kind of slices it like a little cut. It's not even enough to really hurt him badly because as soon as he sees his blood hit the snow, which is a great image, Gawain jumps. It says he leapt to the length of a spear. He jumps as far away from the Green Knight as he can get, pulls his helmet up and puts his helmet on, swings his shield into place, snaps out his sword, and he's standing there ready to fight. He says, "Okay, I gave you one. If you swing at me again, we're fighting." Let's see how the Green Knight replies. The Green Knight remained where he stood, relaxing on his axe, settled the shaft on the rocks, and leaned on the sharp end, and studied the young man standing there, shoulders hunched, and considered that staunch and doughty stance he took, undaunted yet, and in his heart he liked it. Then he said merrily, and with a mighty voice, with a roar like rushing wind, he reproved the knight. "Here, don't be such an ogre on your ground. Nobody here has behaved with bad manners toward you, or done a thing except as the contract said. I owed you a stroke, and I've struck. Consider yourself well paid. And now I release you from all further duties. If I cared to hustle, it may perchance be that I might have hit somewhat harder, and then you might well be cross. The first time I lifted my axe, it was light-hearted sport. I merely feinted and made no mark, as was right, for you kept our pack on the first night with honor, and abided by your word and held yourself true to me, giving me all you owed as a good man should. I fainted a second time, my friend, for the morning you kissed my pretty wife twice, and returned me the kisses. And so for the first 2 days, mere faints, nothing more severe. A man who's true to his word, there's nothing he needs to fear. You failed me, though, on the third exchange, so I've tapped you here. Kissed my pretty wife. This is the big reveal. The Green Knight turns out to be, dun dun dun, Lord Bertilac. He's the knight from the castle. He says that the first two swings were for the two kisses that Gawain gave his wife, but he was honest about it. But then he says, "You failed me on the third exchange, so I've tapped you here." He nicks him because of the sash he's about to explain. "That sash you wear by your scabbard belongs to me. My own wife gave it to you, as I ought to know. I know too of your kisses and all your words and my wife's advances, for I myself arranged them. It was I who sent her to test you. I'm convinced you're the finest man that ever walked this earth, as a pearl is of greater price than dry white peas. So Gawain indeed stands out above all other knights. But you lacked a little, sir, you were less than loyal. But since it was not for the sash itself, or for lust, but because you loved your life, I blame you less." He says, "I blame you less because it was to save his life." He says, "You didn't take the sash because you were lusting after my wife. You didn't take the sash because you were being greedy and wanted this fine piece of cloth. You did it because of the magical powers that it had to save your life. And therefore, I blame you a little less." But let's see how Sir Gawain feels about it. Sir Gawain stood in a study a long, long while, so miserable with disgrace that he wept within, and all the blood of his chest went up to his face, and he shrank away in shame from the man's gentle words. The first words Gawain could find to say were these: "Cursed be cowardice and covetousness both, villainy and vice that destroy all virtue." He caught at the knots of the girdle and loosened them, and fiercely flung the sash at the Green Knight. There's my fault. The foul fiend vex it. Foolish cowardice taught me from fear of your stroke to bargain, covetous, and abandon my kind, the selflessness and loyalty suitable in knights. Here I stand, faulty and false, much as I feared them, both of them, untruth and treachery. May they see sorrow and care. I can't deny my guilt. My works shine none too fair. Give me your good will, and henceforth I'll beware. So as you can see, Gawain is pretty disappointed in himself, pretty ashamed of his actions here. He uses a lot of alliteration in this little speech, and that kind of makes it hard to break down the meaning. But basically, he's saying, "Cursed be my cowardice," and my covetousness means envy or wanting things. He says, "Curse me for being a coward and for coveting my life." He says, "Those things are villainy, they're vice that have destroyed all my virtue. Those seven virtues that I'm supposed to have been destroyed by my cowardice and my desire to live." He says, "Here's my fault." He throws the sash at the knight. "The foul fiend vex it." The fiend is the devil. He says, "Cowardice made me abandon my kind. Cowardice taught me from fear of your stroke to bargain for the sash and abandon my kind, the knights." So he says, "I'm supposed to be selfless. I'm supposed to be loyal. But instead, I was faulty and false. I told a lie and I kept the sash. Much as I've feared untruth and treachery, that's how I've just behaved." He is very ashamed of himself. At that, the Green Knight laughed, saying graciously, "Whatever harm I've had, I hold it amended, since now you're confessed so clean, acknowledging sins and bearing the plain penance of my point. I consider you polished as white and as perfectly clean as if you had never fallen since first you were born." Basically saying, "I forgive you completely. You are as polished and as perfectly clean as if you had never once made a mistake. And I give you, sir, this gold embroidered girdle, for the cloth is as green as my gown. Sir Gawain, think on this when you go forth among great princes. Remember our struggle here. Recall to your mind this rich token. Remember the green chapel. And now come on, let's both go back to my castle and finish the New Year's revels with feasting and joy, not strife, I beg you," said the Lord. And said, "As for my wife, she'll be your friend, no more threat against your life." Basically saying, "Come have dinner with us. I swear my wife won't try to seduce you again." "No, sir," said the knight, and seized his helmet and quickly removed it, thanking the Green Knight. "I've reveled too well already, but fortune be with you. May he who gives all honors honor you well." And so they embraced and kissed and commended each other to the Prince of Paradise, and parted then in the cold. Sir Gawain turned again to Camelot and his lord, and as for the man of green, he went wherever he would. The end. So he says, "Take this sash as a remembrance of this day." He says that it will remind him to be humble. It will remind him to be honest. And the legend goes that the sash went back to the Knights of the Round Table, and they kept it, and it was a symbol not just for Gawain, but for all of them of how a knight should behave. And it showed them that even the great Gawain could make mistakes. And also, Lord Bertilac, once he reveals his identity, goes on to explain that he was cursed by Morgan Le Fay, She always curses everybody. She cursed Dame Ragnell and all of them. So that explains why he was green. I think he's still green. I don't think this broke the spell. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the story of Gawain and the Green